Yeah. All right. Here we are. Night hacking back at Jfokus during lunchtime. I'm Heather Van Cura, and we have a security panel for you here today. So we'll start by introducing our panelists. I'll ask each of you to just introduce yourself. We'll start with Daniel. Just introduce yourself and what your topic was here at Jfokus and your topic of specialty as relates to security.
All right. My name is Daniel Diogan. I'm from Omega Point, a consultancy firm here in Stockholm. I specialize in secure by design, and that's been my talks here at Jfokus. And it's basically a mindset where you develop secure software without actively thinking about security.
Cool. Siren?
My name is Siren, obviously.
Is that on?
I have no idea.
Can you maybe a little bit closer to the mic?
Hello?
Yes, perfect.
Oh, wow. My name is Siren. I'm the head of security for Min Doktor, which is a digital healthcare company here in Sweden. My talk today at Jfokus was about security and architecture, but my special area within security is privacy and integrity questions.
Okay. And Jen?
Hi, I'm Jen. I'm a security advocate at Google on Cloud Platform, and I did a talk about Kubernetes runtime security. And I'm newer to the security area, having come from web and app dev, but I guess for now my specialty is red teaming, penetration testing.
What was that last thing you said?
Red team / penetration testing.
Okay, all right.
Yep.
And Aaron, you have your own, yeah?
So I'm Aaron from Riot Secure, and I'm an embedded developer for many years, and I tackled the security problem with IoT because it's crazy and insane and not really there. So I had a talk earlier this morning on building a secure device lifecycle management platform, and tackling IoT security is a big issue. So.
Right. I think we were just discussing that as the panelists came up earlier today. We were saying, I think your first comment was, well, there isn't any security for IoT, so maybe you could speak a little bit to that in terms of.
I think one of the talks I was in just before I came here, as I said, security is the S within IoT. That's the good old joke, because there is no S in IoT. So, and it really comes down to the fact that IoT devices are very low powered or resource constrained, and basically there's no easy out-of-the-box solution for security for these devices. So it's basically put in the too hard bucket and someone else's problem. So a lot of developers are saying, I'm just going to build a product, get to market, and I'll deal with security later on. And right now it's kind of biting everyone in the backside with the rise of the Mirai botnets, with even the point of just default passwords. We're not talking about security and with lack of communication, but it's the idea that things are just left by defaults, and hackers will say, scan, bang, 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 oh, I'm in. I can do whatever I want now. So IoT security is not only about encryption, but it's like some of the other topics here. It's about privacy, integrity, and actually locking down a device when you make it for production. And most of the vendors, they just simply don't care. And the topic I had was about device lifecycle management. And just recently, Axis had a massive problem with one of the libraries they use for the video exchange that was hacked. And they had 95% of the devices were affected. And even though they did fix it, it was still the user's problem to actually go into the IP camera and say, browse for a firmware file. So there was no life cycle of that device, and even though the vulnerability was fixed, it's still out there for millions and millions of users. So that whole process of actually getting a life cycle approach and actually having the vendor being able to push out updates and do continuous integration is what is really needed. And right now it's like deploy, sell it, product version B, move on, sell that one, next, and they're trying to just do end of life and say, under the carpet, and forget about it. But the reality is these devices are out there, and there's billions of them. So.
Right. And I think, Siren, you mentioned that you work some of your time in healthcare and privacy concerns especially. Have you seen some of these types of problems coming up, and what types of solutions have you been able to provide?
Well, we have patient journals, so obviously, we have patient journals, so the privacy integrity of that type of data is paramount, because that's people's health data, which is among the most attractive data to actually steal, which is tragic. And I mean, recently there was a case where I believe it was Finland or Norway, I'm not sure which one, where actually half of the country's health data was stolen by hackers. And I mean, if you have someone's health data, you have all of the relevant information about them. You have their health. You can change their insurance. You can change what, I mean, you can really affect somebody. So making sure that those types of journals stay safe within the cloud or within the server is for me, a paramount risk or a paramount problem.
Mm-hmm. Any tips you can provide to developers? I think you mentioned that your talk kind of went into a little bit of more of the architectures.
Yeah, so I talked a lot about architecture. For patient data, for patient records specifically, encryption, obviously, and it's key management. I mean, if you look at the cloud, for example, I mean, the cloud came, and the first thing we did was load everything up into the cloud because it solved the idea of having big, expensive server solutions that are hard to maintain and expensive. But then all of a sudden, we're starting to see keys for the private keys up in the cloud in Amazon and in Google, and we're not really maintaining the integrity of our data. We're not looking at key management, access control, and all the classic security problems that we knew about, but because it's a new technology, we're not actually solving any of those problems.
Well, this is not very encouraging.
It doesn't sound good, does it?
No, it doesn't.
I think someone on the panel mentioned earlier, too, that a lot of developers just don't like to think about security, right? Yeah. And maybe, did you have something? Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, being a recent newcomer to security, I'm amazed by the mistakes of my past when I was a developer that ended up going into production. Oh, it's just a quick fix to get it through this one incident, and then it sticks around forever. And as a result, I'm surprised by the amount of impact you can make on securing your stuff with just small amounts of effort. It's a good time to be able to make big changes and start to resolve some of these challenging issues.
Like, do you have any recommendations? So you said with just small amounts of effort. So, for instance.
Well, I mean, start by design, right? So it's a natural progression to this guy, right?
Well, I guess that's what secure by design is all about, right?
Yeah.
If you have a mindset of wanting to build great software, a lot of those concepts in there actually give you security benefits implicitly. And I guess if developers start doing that, we can get, better software out there. And like you said before here, that a lot of times developers don't like security. They feel it's hard, complex, somebody else's job maybe, right? But building great software is everyone's responsibility.
But I think also there's a mix of different types of security issues. One is, like the classic key management. That's obviously not a developer's problem, but it's also, looking at, bad code like buffer overflows. Those things are more developers focused, and that's more along the lines of design practices and best practices that they need to have from day one. And like that an old bug or an old flaw sits around and never gets fixed because it's like, oh yeah, it's on the to-do list, and you never get back to it. You're always doing something more new, creative, and you go, one day I'm going to get back. And when that goes out production, bang, backdoor.
Right.
There it is. So.
All right, so design patterns, that's one.
That's
I think
one.
Maybe Jen had a few small tips in terms of effort that developers could put in. So of course, following design patterns, key, important, right? Did you have?
Yeah, I mean, it's often difficult to make the business case to spend time on security as a trade-off for other functionality or performance or something like that. But, as software developers, we can certainly sneak in some good security either early on by design, or if it's become late and we have fewer opportunities to do that, even just web searching for exploits on general frameworks and stuff you've used, and just there's a lot of content out there at security conferences and stuff. You can just watch a very entertaining YouTube talk from DEF CON about whatever thing you're using, and there's probably some obvious advice on like changing default passwords, turning on security controls, turning off like default accounts that might have more permissions than they need.
Yeah, it's important. Did you want to share your top?
Right. I mean, my talk at 1 is actually going to be about how you can apply certain patterns to achieve good design, but at the same time, you actually fix a lot of security problems. A lot of injection flaws are simply reduced to a very small set of possibilities when you apply these kind of patterns. And we're also going to look at sensitive data, how you can actually detect that you're accidentally leaking that data. And that's, of course, very important when it comes to GDPR, that most developers here in Europe are aware of.
Right. I think we talked earlier that there's a lot of sensitive regulation coming around privacy, and I think Siren was speaking a little bit about some of the concerns that you're addressing in your work.
Yeah, I mean, the GDPR is coming to effect now in May. And it definitely has a design principle called privacy by design, which mandates that you actually, when you're building your product or you're building your software, you actually have to take security into consideration, which I personally think is amazing. It's my very favorite law. I love it.
That's the first time anyone said that.
One law that's really good, yes.
I know, I love it. Like, I'm really, really excited because it actually forces, it mandates an actual look at security, and that really hasn't existed before.
Right.
And so it's been easy to be like, oh, we're going to do security later. But now it's actually against the law.
Right.
Which I think is a huge change. So I'm actually really excited about GDPR. Like, it is literally my favorite law. So I'm its biggest fan.
Okay. Anyone else have any like, maybe just close it out with, you know, how you think that law, when it comes into effect, what the impact is going to be in terms of software development and taking security into consideration as a developer?
I think it also, you have to look at where the law's being. Is it just EU or
yeah, it's EU specific, and so it's for all data subjects that are within the EU.
Yeah, so
and anyone who does business in the EU.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, it's a good thing because, I mean, at least then you know it's there, right? And it's been at least considered rather than just saying, you know, let's rush a product to market. You know, privacy is always a massive concern. So, you know, I agree it's a good thing. I'd love to see it in Australia myself, but they got other laws down there, so you know, and the US is different again. So,
right.
You know, it needs to be a global thing rather than just a local regional thing. But it's the same thing, even with IoT and security. It's like you can't drive a car without having liability insurance. And I think security is going to become a major focus point the minute that users are responsible for what their devices will potentially do. So if they have liability on their products, they will start caring about what security exists. So you know, you don't drive a car uninsured. So, but we're using webcams uninsured, and it's like, oh, if it takes down Twitter, it takes down Twitter, big deal. But I think if the minute that consumers become responsible for the hardware they have, then they'll start thinking about security. But not only in regards to their privacy, but also in regards to liability. So,
I think security is going to, over the year now, become more and more bread and butter for people. They need to be included in your daily practice. It's going to be like, you know, like you're writing tests, right? I mean, nobody's saying like, you shouldn't write tests, I guess, anyway, right?
But I never heard anyone say that.
I've got time to write tests.
so I really think that security is going to be part of everyone's, you know, development habits. It's going to be a natural thing for most developers.
But I think it's more. It's not just developers. It's also architects. It's the whole flow. Even up to sales. It has to be, you know, driven out there that, you know, security is number one. Don't get an insecure product. It's your own risk. And, you know, it needs to go all the way down. And, you know, I think the developers are definitely the ones to focus on, and that's why we're here at the conference. So,
Jen, you want to comment on that? And also as it pertains to containers, since your talk was on containers, right?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, like, going from legislation and compliance back to containers, it's a big jump, but...
Well, I was closing it out with the future, but then, you know, we didn't really hear from you about that perspective of security.
Yeah, so like containerization has certainly opened us up to a lot of interesting challenges and a lot of potential for automation and tooling around security, which I'm really excited to see develop. So still pretty early on in a lot of container security stuff. And early on, more complexity is more risk, but it's starting to look like it'll also give us the capability to build tooling that'll help us automate a lot of the things that are currently manual in a lot of security processes. So I'm pretty excited about what's coming.
All right. Well, thanks to all the panelists. Give a lot for us to think about in terms of the dangers that are out there as developers and the effects that we can have on every person's life. I think that's really important as we develop software to consider that emotional intelligence, the empathy of how we're impacting people in the world and humanity. So,
I mean, the biggest danger is what people can do with your data. That's the biggest threat. So you want to make sure that your data is yours, not anyone else's.
Right.
Because you don't want people, you know, buying that data and utilizing it for their own benefits. So, yeah.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.